Hi, and welcome to Heart of Steamboat's Fast Forward. My name is Maggie Taylor, and today we are at the bookstore. We're at Off the Beaten Path, and I am in the Kids Nook. And I'm in the Kids Nook today, not because I'm necessarily going to read a children's book, but because I'm talking about stories. And this Kids Nook is a revamp of a Kids Nook that was here about 14 years ago, when a lot of our current graduating high school seniors were little and would be in this place. You can see it's not very big, reading some of their first books, maybe with their parents or with a friend. And so I just thought this would be a perfect place to talk about some wisdom that we get from books of the Bible in our journey. I want to talk about 3 different stories today as we explore some of the lessons our Bible text has for us. The first story I want to talk about is part of Moses' story. Moses' story is long and lasts mostly through the book of Exodus. But in Exodus chapter 22, there's an interesting story. So Moses has gone up to receive the tablets of the 10 Commandments. And as Moses goes up, he's excited, he's looking forward to this time with God, and he has this great conversation with God. But Moses is taking a long time. And as he comes down from the mountain, what he sees is extremely displeasing to him. The Israelite people have convinced Aaron that they need to make an idol out of a golden calf and worship it. So as Moses is coming in the distance, he sees this idol worship, something that's obviously not pleasing to God. And he breaks the 10 Commandments. He throws the 2 tablets that he's received from God on the ground, and he breaks them. And after a time of anger and retribution, Moses reascends the mountain, and he gets a new set of 10 Commandment tablets. So what does this teach any of us about the nature of God or the nature of our lives? What wisdom does this offer? I would say that it offers the wisdom that sometimes you're going to mess up. Sometimes things aren't going to go your way. You're going to make a mistake. We've all made them. And I hate to break it to you, we'll all continue to make them in our lives. But if it happens, it's okay. It might not be the same that it used to be. There were definitely different tablets. But God will still love you, and you can be forgiven. There is nothing that you can do, no mistake you can make, that will keep you from being loved by God. So, if you make a mistake, realize it, recognize it, say you're sorry, but realize that you're still going to be loved. And don't worry too much about not making mistakes. Don't live your life in such a restricted way that you don't allow yourself that option to make a mistake at times, because it's part of living and learning and growing. That mistake that Moses made, it helped him temper his anger for further times when the people he was leading might have disappointed him. It helped him to know that he could always go back to God and say, I messed up. Can you forgive me? And always, that is an okay thing to do. The second story, actually the next 2 stories I want to share with you, I think are some classics that come both from Luke chapter 10. Now the first part of Luke chapter 10 talks about sending out people to spread the gospel, which is absolutely amazing and great, but the pieces of wisdom come from the later parts of the chapter. The later parts of the chapter, you first see the story of the Good Samaritan. I think most of us know the story of the Good Samaritan. It's become very popular in culture, and I'm sure there are plenty of books that are written upon this story. But essentially, a lawyer comes to Jesus, and he's really trying to figure out what law is the most important. And he says, what is the most important law of the commandments, those commandments that we had just talked about with Moses? And Jesus says, love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. Now, the lawyer thinks to himself for a minute, and he says, well, who's my neighbor? And so Jesus tells this story. He tells the story of a man who's on his way on this long road and is attacked by robbers. And 3 people pass by this man who's laying on the side of the road, helpless, probably bleeding. All of his things have been taken. 2 religious people, and then 1 man who's known as a Samaritan. Now, the reason it's called the Good Samaritan is because Samaritans weren't seen to be that good. They were seen to be people who couldn't be trusted, who didn't necessarily adhere to the laws, adhere to the rules. They were outsiders. They weren't people who you would make friends with or necessarily even have anything to do with. Maybe even people you would cross to the other side of the road to avoid. So Jesus tells this story, and the Samaritan man is the one who helps the man who'd fallen into the hands of thieves and robbers on the side of the road. He puts him on his own animal, takes him to an inn, and pays for him to continue to be taken care of even when he's gone. And then Jesus, when he's finished telling the story, says, "Which of these people was the neighbor?" And he said, "The one who had mercy." So our lesson from this story is that our neighbor is everyone. Our neighbor is the person that looks like us and the person that doesn't. Our neighbor is the person that has the same beliefs and has different beliefs. Our neighbor is everyone around us. And we're called not only to love our neighbor, but also we're called to see them in the beautiful light that God created them to be. We're not only called to be loved, but to show love. And as we do that, we're going to meet a variety of different people. And I think that's one of the parts of wisdom in this, right? If Jesus had just wanted us to meet different people and, he would say, go travel. But that's not necessarily the point. The point is not only meeting people who are different than you, but also finding places for conversation and overlap. And knowing that truly you can be loved by a variety of different people. And you can love a variety of different people. They don't have to look like you or speak like you. You don't even have to be able to speak the same language, but there's this humanity of love that we have access to. This way that we can just connect with other people through a smile. And that's what Jesus calls us into in this moment. He calls us to know that we are loved, regardless of how we look or how we speak or where we might be on our journey. And he calls us to love others, regardless of where they are on theirs. The last piece of scripture at the end of Luke chapter 10 is the story about 2 sisters, Mary and Martha. Mary and Martha are probably the sisters that are completely different. But Jesus is in their house and visiting, and Martha's just working. She's cleaning, she's cooking, she's doing all of the things. And Mary is sitting like a little child listening to a book at the feet of Jesus. Just sitting there and listening and anticipating and excited. And Martha, she goes right past her sister, goes to Jesus and says, "Why are you okay with Mary not helping me?" And Jesus so wisely says, he doesn't diminish what Martha's done, let's be clear, but he says, you are both working, but Mary knows what's important. For the work that you're doing, the cleaning, the cooking, it'll all be there, but I won't be. Jesus knows that his time is coming for him to leave this group, for him to leave his disciples. And he says, Mary is choosing what is here for right now. And you should too. So what wisdom does that provide? Jesus is telling Mary and Martha to live in the moment. So oftentimes we get caught up with that work. Now, work is important, right? But, I have to do this, or I have to be perfect, or I have to write this paper, but my citations aren't done. But all of the things that I could be doing. But here's the thing, is those papers and that extra shift and that time you spend Googling all of the things, it will all be there. But maybe the conversation with a good friend won't. The study abroad experience won't. Maybe that moment that you just get to go out at night and walk and giggle and laugh. All of those things, they're fleeting. So live in the moment. Yes, you need to get your work done and you need to take care of your responsibilities, but when you have an opportunity for fun, take it, because it won't necessarily be there on the back end. Jesus knew that his time was short, and so he praised Mary for just soaking it up while she could, and said, Martha, the cleaning will be there after I'm gone. And that's so true. Yes, keeping your room clean is important. I would even suggest that you change your bed sheets. But if it's a choice between spending an afternoon, a picnic with friends, and cleaning your sheets, go on the picnic with your friends. So in total, these 3 lessons are, number 1, you're going to make mistakes, but they're never going to keep God from loving you and those in your life from loving you. Number 2, you are called to love others, and you are called to be loved, regardless of where you are on your journey. And last but not least, live in the moment. Take advantage of the moment. And know that all of these options, maybe, like I said, it's a study abroad or experience, or meeting someone new, or going to a lecture that you don't even think you'd like, they're all opportunities to grow as a person and grow into the person that God has called you to be. So take advantage of them, because the work, it'll always be there. There'll always be something to clean. There'll always be something to do. There'll always be something that you wish you had 15 more minutes on a paper or a test. But lay it down, because life is much more than that. God calls us into these spaces knowing that we will mess up. We'll inevitably at some point choose to procrastinate maybe a little bit too much. But the fun is in the journey, and the wisdom is in our scriptures. So I send you forth knowing that life is about choices. Make them with balance. Make them with the wisdom of this ancient text that we use. But know that your choices don't necessarily define you. But your choices create your journey. Go forth knowing that you're blessed. Go forth knowing that you're loved. And go forth knowing that wherever you walk, God walks with you. Amen.